Hi, my name is Beth Hiley here for Board Game Geek TV. We're at Gen Con 2013. I'm sitting down with Jeff Agostine and Stephen Bonacore.
Great to see you again.
A handshake, all right. And I'm really excited we get to have you sitting with us in person to do, I'm just going to bring out the box between our heads here, is Space Cadets Dice Duel. There you are, right there.
That's right. Yes, with my daughter, Sydney.
I know, fantastic.
The family design team of the English.
I know, and Stephen, before we get started, just on a quick overview of the game, you had mentioned something about the artwork that I just would love to get on camera, that this was not the original artist that did Space Cadets.
That's right. He wasn't available to do the cover, so we got someone who I knew could do a great job with like that cartoony style of art, which I think is just great in Space Cadets, and I told him, use those images and now give me an action shot on the bridge, because this game is all about action, and Jeff is going to go through and tell you how the craziness of Space Cadets Dice Duel works.
I recognized the guys on the cover immediately, not realizing it was another artist.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, Jeff, then take it away.
Yeah, well, Space Cadets Dice Duel is a team versus team game. So it's either for 2 versus 2 all the way up to 4 versus 4, so 4 to 8 players. And the team cooperates with each other, and they have different stations like you have in Space Cadets, except rather than being purely cooperative, this is against another team. And this is not just like an expansion for Space Cadets or something. This is a totally different game, but kind of set sort of in the same genre or universe. So the way that Dice Duel works is that there are no turns, and it is just continuous action once the game starts. So players are just going to roll the dice and try to get the different combinations that they need to do things, and they're just going to roll and re-roll and re-roll and re-roll as fast as they can until the other ship blows up and then the game ends. So it usually takes about 20 to 30 minutes to play.
It's a lot shorter than Space Cadets.
It's a lot shorter than Space Cadets, which is good because it's really intense and gets your heart pumping, and I think that it would really.
And don't play it near a movie theater
we'll get to that.
You'll hear why in a second.
But the basic mechanic of the game is around that there's different dice for the stations, and there's 6 different stations. You've got the engineering station.
Yeah, put it right up about there.
We've got the engineering station, then we've got weapons, sensors, tractor beams, shields, and helm. And each of them have their own separate dice, which are all custom and really nice, brightly colored and friendly dice. The engineering just has regular D6s. And at the start of the game, engineering is going to roll those dice. And they can pass those out to the different stations, or they can re-roll them whatever they want. So if we decide we want weapons or 1s, I can keep rolling until I get some 1s at some point. Or we can just switch and do 5s, which go to helm. So then the 5s would get passed over to the person that's on the helm station. Now, each of the stations, like helm, here's the yellow dice for helm. Helm is not allowed to roll their dice to actually move the ship until they get some of these energy dice. So when they get 2 energy dice in here, they can take 2 of their dice, and they can roll them and roll them and roll them and roll them, and they can put 1 on if they're happy with that. As soon as they put a die on the display, that locks that and then they move it over back to engineering, and then engineering can start to re-roll that and send it off to somebody else. So the flow of these energy dice through the system is really important. They got to communicate. Does a team want to load the torpedo tubes, or do they want to set up shields, or they want to move the ship? So they all got to kind of work together to as a team to do the ship. So the different stations themselves are quite simple. Helm just has these different arrows that maneuver the ship. Now the interesting thing about helm is that there's 3 dice, but you don't actually move the ship on the board until all 3 dice are on the display. So once you get the 3rd die out there, then you would move the ship. So this would move the ship up 1, up and turn, and then 2 spaces forward. And then once that's done, you pull these dice off the display, and you've got to get more energy dice before you get. So if the team's putting a lot of energy into helm, the ship's going to move faster, but it's going to be at the detriment to the other stations.
And that's going to be simultaneous while the other team is going on, so you potentially could run into each other. Or
yeah, and everything is open, so you can see where the other team's putting their dice. Since you have to put out 3 dice, you can kind of start to see, okay, they're going to be moving forward and turning, so I'm going to try to maneuver in such a way to deal with that. Then there's 3 stations that are involved in launching torpedoes, which is the main way that you're going to win the game. You need to cause 4 points of damage to the enemy ship. To win, there's 2 ways to do that. You can either hit them with torpedoes, or you can drop mines and have them run into the mines.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, so we'll move that one up.
Torpedoes, sensors, weapons, sensors, and shields all are involved in that. And the weapon station is where you actually load the torpedoes. And a torpedo is made from 3 dice. So in order to load 1 torpedo, you need a nose, a body, and a tail. and that's one torpedo. There's 4 torpedo tubes on the ship, 2 that will shoot out the front and 2 that will shoot out the back. And so you've got 6 dice, so you can either have 2 in the front or 2 in the back, or you can split them up.
That's assuming
however
you
want.
get 6.
Assuming you get enough energy
engineering.
and you can put them on, but once you put the dice on, then remember you can. So even with only 1 energy die, you can eventually get the torpedo tubes loaded.
Is it permissible to build it
Yep. You can
out
put
of
them in
order?
any order.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as soon as I roll my 3, I got a middle, so I can just drop that
Okay.
on there, and I can keep rolling these 2, and now I got a nose cone. But until I get all 3 on, I can't launch it. And the front torpedoes will shoot out of a wedge in the front of the ship. The rear torpedoes can shoot a wedge out of the back, so you can kind of work with your helmsman in terms of the direction you want to face the other ship. And you can't shoot out the sides, so in this case, the black ship could shoot at the white ship, but the white ship could
can't.
not shoot at the black ship from either of the tubes. But then when you launch, in order to hit it, you don't just have to have a torpedo, but you have to have sensors.
You need to have a sensor lock, of
Right.
course.
So you got to have weapon lock, and this is the sensor display. Here's some of the sensor dice. So this little crosshairs is a weapon
We're
lock
just going to
symbol.
move that up just a little bit.
Thanks. So if I get these 2 dice on the weapon lock area of the display, I have 3 little icons on there, a double and a single, so that's 3 lock points. And you count the number of squares you're away. In this case, I'm 2 squares away from the enemy ship, so I need only 2 points. So since I have 3, I can hit them. Except that the enemy ship, if this is the enemies over here, they may have these symbols on there if they choose. Those are jammers.
Uh-huh.
And if they have jammers, that adds to what I need. So if there's 2 jammers and they're 2 squares away, they're going to need 4 locks to hit it. So when you launch, you want to look at what the enemy is doing. Very, very often I see people play the game and they get so caught up in the excitement, I finally got the weapon lock and I got the torpedoes on, launch, and then they look over and they see that the enemy has lots of jammers, and that's going to be a problem. So, and the way that you fire the torpedoes, and we talked about how everyone's rolling the dice all at the same time in continuous action, but when you decide you want to launch, you shout out fire 1 or fire 2, depending on how many torpedoes you want to launch. And at that point, the game action freezes. Everyone's got to put their dice down, and you stop, everyone takes a deep breath, and then you start checking the icons, counting the squares, and you check the shield to see if it hits the ship. So you go through all that. It's a little more relaxed, and that's the other stuff.
Breathe.
and also, so you don't have to, get crazy and try to see what's going on in real time.
Right.
So all the stuff that happens in real time is very easy to manage.
Right, and because that's really going to be critical
Right.
to winning or
So
losing the
stuff
game.
when
You don't want to mess that up.
Stuff where you're really affecting the enemy ship, that's the action freezes at that point.
You forgot to mention one important thing about when somebody says fire 1 or fire 2. Another occurrence happens on the other side of the table. They say bleep every time because
Yeah,
they're
pretty
about to get a torpedo jammed up there.
Yes.
Yes.
And one thing that we did learn is when we were demoing it once in a public place, and as the people playing the game all started shouting fire, 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 and then people came over to us and said, you may not want to have them shout fire. You may want to change it to something else. So that's
We use launch.
So
I
now
think,
we use launch for the exhibit area here. 'Cause we didn't want to get into trouble. When you launch at somebody, you lose the dice for the torpedoes that you launch. You lose all your lock dice, and the opponent loses all their jammer
jammers.
dice. So you can launch, if they got a lot of jammers, you can launch a torpedo even though you know it's going to miss just to get rid of their
right.
jammers.
You might go fire 1, make them lose their jammers, and then if you have another torpedo already loaded, fire 1 again, boom, and then you hit them with that.
And then this is a shield display, so if they get hit, if the torpedo does actually hit, you check shields, and you can set up these shield dice like this. This die here will be aft shields, the little 1 dot is the front shield, so here I could set it up any way that I want. And again, I got to keep rolling to get the shields that I want. But once it's set up, then that can protect the ship. So if a side that doesn't get hit, if a side that gets hit has no shields, the torpedoes automatically do 1 damage, and that side will have to lose 1 of their energy dice. They put it on the damage track over here, and if they lose 4 of their dice, then that's how you lose the game. If there's 3 dice all in 1 spot, you can't hit it. If there's any one in between, then you got to roll the weapon dice and try to get these little blast symbols to penetrate through the shields. And then those shields will come off. So then again, if you have another torpedo, they got to quickly try to restore the shields, or you've got to try to.
Now, is it true with any of these that if the engineer sends you over another energy die, that you could take one off that you had placed to then reassign?
Yeah, you can always take them off, but you can't put them back on until you get an energy and re-roll them. So yeah, you can do that. And then the last station, which is kind of like the Swiss Army knife station, is the tractor beams.
Oh yeah.
And lost my microphone. And that one lets you do 3 different things. You can grab these crystals, which give you special abilities in the game. You can move the enemy ship, so you can actually push them into the asteroids, which will force them to lose shield dice, or push them through nebula, which will force them to lose their green sensor dice. Or you can drop mines. When you drop mines, if somebody moves into the square with a mine, whether it's your mine or somebody else's mine, you can be blown up by your own mines. If somebody moves through it or is moved in with a tractor beam, then that also can blow up and cause damage. And so you keep just going. Like I said, it's very intense. It's very fast. It takes about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the aggressiveness of the teams and if they like to run an eye to regroup or if they just go after each other right away. But I really just love playing this game, and I love teaching it to people.
And is it the same as in Space Cadet, where you can sort of assign who you want to be in what role? And you can make it as one person could be 4.
Right, we give suggested
combos.
layouts, but you can give them out any way you want. In Space Cadets, there was a mechanic where you could switch. You were forced to switch your positions, but we don't have that here because it's so quick.
Yeah.
So you're on your station, and that's
right,
it.
So deal with it for another 15 minutes.
And if you play with 4 on 4, if you play with 8 people, you have 3 people doing the stations, and the 4th person is the captain and stands behind the team.
And
he just yells at everybody, but also
action.
looks at the other team and what they're doing.
Actually, that could be really useful.
It's really, really, and it's a fun position. A lot of people, when we first teach it to them, like, oh, I don't want to be the captain, and they get disappointed because they're not really going to get to roll and do stuff. But then at the end, they're like, I love being the captain. It was just awesome. So
that's when you really learn when there's for a crazy, frantic dice rolling game, you'll learn that there's so much strategy involved where when you're going to be looking at the other player, the captain's going to be looking over the other player,
right. Where do they
finding
have
out
the shields?
where is his shield?
Do they have jammers? Do they have torpedoes in the front or the back? Do we need to move? Can we use one of our crystals?
Yeah.
There's a lot of little tactical things that you can do. So you can play it on a real surface level and jump in, and people have a great time the first time they play. But once you play it 4 or 5 times, there's a lot of nuance that starts to come out.
What does trigger the end of the game? The destruction
when
of the other
someone
ship?
takes 4 damage, their ship blows up, and that's the end of the game.
Bye-bye.
So that's why weapons really are the most important, because that will...
Yeah, weapons and mines is what you need to do to win the game.
We brought a non-insignificant number of copies here to Gen Con, flew them in especially for this, and in the first hour I sold out 3/4, almost all of them. We're down to a couple of cases left.
Yes.
So if anybody's out there with a friend here who wants it, tell them to go get it today. Don't yell at me tomorrow if I don't have one.
But in retail, is this...
This will not be out until Essen time.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be out in October at this point. I was hoping September, but it looks like October now. The games we got these printed up for here. The rest of them are getting printed up in the next couple of weeks, and then by the time they ship across the Atlantic, we'll have them over. This is being printed in Ludofact in Germany, highest quality, biggest game printer in the world.
Well, Jeff and Stephen, thank you so much both for stopping by to show
so much,
us Space Cadets Dice Duel.
Bye.